everyone. Let me know if you can't hear me. I am going to project as much as possible. I'm definitely going to change the screen because it's a little to see your face that big. Well, thank you, first of all, for coming this early in the morning to hear me talk about our company and what we're doing in travel. And thanks to Joel and the team for getting this all set up. My name's Catalina Mayorga, and I'm the founder and CEO of El Camino Travel. We are an experiential travel brand that we say we're local first. So what that means is we're working with local creatives and entrepreneurs to curate highly immersive experiences for our travelers. So we're collaborating with chefs and mixologists, artists, social activists in the countries we visit, and creating experiences that are rooted in their passions. And the reason we do this is, one, we really want to give our travelers a diverse perspective into the places they're visiting. So just like the United States, one country or one destination's story cannot be told by one lens alone. And we want to be able, with the locals we work with, we want to be able to introduce them to an international network, but also create an economic opportunity or revenue stream for them to be able to fuel their passion and what they're excited about. As many of you guys might know, we also have photographers on all our trips documenting the experience. And the reason for this is we want to get people back to being immersed in the moment and fully aware and paying attention to the person right in front of them, rather than so focused on capturing it. So how many of you guys have had a perfect vacation moment or Zen moment ruined because someone had to get like that overhead shot or the perfect selfie, or who have been guilty of it? Yeah, okay, me, I'm both. I'm fully aware of that. So we're a very visually driven company, and so I wanted to share a little bit the El Camino experience with you, short of actually taking you to the destination. I wish I could do that. I'm not gonna give you your Oprah moment right now and say, hey, everyone look under their seat. There's a trip to Cuba. Talk to me in 10 years. Hopefully we're there. But this video, I hope, gives you guys a little bit of insight. Let me see if I can get out of the way. You guys might have recognized some people on that trip. We had Kate Warren as our photographers, local DC photographer, and then we had a pretty big DC cohort there. So serendipity, it's often described as the faculty of making fortunate discovery by accident. So in thinking about this theme, I thought I would share my response to a question I often get asked. And that is, how did you come up with the idea for El Camino Travel? And in my response, I referenced two aha moments on a trip that I had to Guatemala in May of 2014. At that time, I was working in international development and had my own consulting business, mostly traveling throughout Latin America. So I was there for 2 weeks, and I had the weekend off to do whatever. And so I went to this, how many people have been to Guatemala here? Okay, Lake Atitlan, do you guys know it? Yeah. So it's a beautiful, beautiful lake surrounded by 3 volcanoes and 12 villages, and the main form of transportation is getting around by water taxi. So I jumped into my water taxi, and the first thing I did was grab my phone from my back pocket and immediately started taking images. And then I looked around the boat and I realized all the tourists, we had our iPads and our phones out, just taking in this beautiful scene through the screen of our device. And mind you, this was 6 months before the explosion of the selfie stick, so I can only imagine what that scene looks like now. And in the moment, I wasn't judging anyone or anything, but I was just like, oh my goodness, the experience of travel has really changed with social media and mobile technology, because the reality is that everyone wanted to get to their hotels, connect to the Wi-Fi, and immediately upload put a filter on it and upload it to whatever social media channel that they wanted to share it on. So that was kind of like the first aha moment. And then on my last day there, I was in another taxi ride. And I was talking to my taxi driver about everything going on in Central America around politics, but particularly about the impact the drug industry has had on violence in the area. And out of nowhere, he goes, you know, thank God for tourism. And I was like, oh. And I was never, like, other than traveling on my own, I was never thinking about tourism or a travel company or anything. I was like, okay, why do you say that? That's really, really interesting. And he goes, well, it provides me a high income. It provides me a reliable income. The only other industry that can compete with what I'm making in tourism is the drug industry. So thank God for tourism. It is keeping me out of the drug industry. And that simple statement just got to me. And so on the plane ride back, I just couldn't stop thinking about that moment, and also about that scene on the boat. And I was like, how can I get people off their phone? Well, what if we had photographers? Is that even possible? Would they be interested? What is missing in travel? Because, you know, I worked in international development, so I had seen some incredible projects, but I've also saw a lot of failed projects that once the grant money runs up, people are out of there, the jobs are gone. So what is going to create a company that can create sustainable and financial income for various individuals? Okay, a travel company. Well, what's missing travel? Well, I'm a millennial. There's no travel company really creating the experiences that I seek when I go to a country. And now, 3 years later almost, we have El Camino Travel. So as I was thinking about all of this, I really, in thinking about serendipity and the theme, the founding story was like, okay, when Joel asked me to talk about it, great, we're good to go. I have the story and everything can stem from that. But as I dug in deeper into the theme of serendipity, and I talked to people that know me really well and know El Camino, I quickly realized those two aha moments weren't the sole reason El Camino exists. If you look at what drives El Camino and what our underlying values are, it's really a culmination of my life events. So, okay, I didn't click too much. So I'm not going to go through like my whole timeline. Is anyone from Washington State knows Yen Louie? It's like the cheesiest thing that all your parents made you do. So I'm not going to like share prom photos and all that stuff, but I do want to share 4 pivotal moments in my life that I think reflect also, that have really shaped who I am, have shaped what El Camino is. So this is me and my little sister. I'm on the left. We are only 18 months apart. And my family, we're Colombian, my parents are Colombian, and we spoke English and Spanish in my household. And okay, I told myself I wasn't gonna tear up in this part, and I'm gonna try really hard. I'm very protective of my little sister. But she had a speech impediment and learning disability that made it really hard for her to distinguish between English and Spanish. And so since she was 3 to about 7 years old, she spoke this really garbled language, and no one really could understand her except for me. And so for several years, she would whisper in my ear or tell me what she wanted to tell the rest of the world, and I would tell the adults what she needed or what she was thinking. And then you better believe, like in school, when anyone would make fun of her, her big sister was right there demanding an apology and making sure they backed down. So at a very early age, I learned how to put myself in someone's shoes and how to stand up for what you believe in. In college, my first class was Human Rights in Latin America. And I took it because it sounded interesting, but it really changed the course of my life. That professor and the content, I learned about the Civil War in Colombia in depth, so I had a better understanding of why my parents came to this country. And that set me off at 18 trying to understand the world. So I went everywhere from Guatemala to India, meeting with social activists, journalists who were risking their lives to tell the truth, victims of genocide, environmental activists, all sorts of people who left me so inspired and wanting to do more. But at the same time, it was also a really huge lesson in that this world is a very, very beautiful place filled with beautiful people, but it is a very complex place that is very unjust and unfair to a lot of people as well. Out of college, my first job was as a union organizer here in DC. How many of you know the Gaylord Hotel? Yeah, so I was a team of organizers that helped to work thousands of the workers there when it opened up. And as part of that, that training, they sent me to Detroit in the middle of the winter to do a back-to-back workshops on listening, because we really needed to understand the workers' fears, but also those moments in their life where they overcame those fears, and the moments in their lives where they really pulled out their strength. And the reason we did that is because we knew at some point that they were going to be facing their managers or boss, and they needed to stay strong and confident in their belief that they deserve health insurance, a fair living wage, and fair working rights in the workplace. So with that, I really learned the importance of the power of listening and asking the right questions. And then after that, and this is the last moment, I promise, I worked with the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. It's the trade association that represents thousands of rural electric co-ops in the United States. I was in the international department, so we were focused on bringing rural electrification to some of the most remote areas in Sudan and Bolivia, Guatemala, Philippines. And as part of it, we would send volunteer linemen from our rural electric co-ops. So from the most rural areas of the United States in Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, all sorts of places, to go and train and set up lines in Sudan and all these places I had mentioned. For many of them, I was helping them get their passport for the first time, and we weren't sending them on a beach vacation, for sure. And what the stories they would come back with, how their perspectives on the world just completely changed because of those 2 weeks, really taught me the importance of creating genuine moments of deep human connection for others. Sorry, I'm just gonna go in. So at El Camino, when I look at what we're doing, is that we are really determined to create moments of empathy through travel. So, that's what empathy, that word empathy, is what really strings those 4 moments together. And what we're doing is trying to recreate that through interesting experiences. And I want to be really clear here. Empathy doesn't have to be a sad or somber thing. You can share in someone's determination, their grit, their hustle, their excitement, their drive, and their strength. So that's what we want to do. We want our travelers to leave our trips invigorated and inspired by the people they meet. So how do we do this? We partner with the dancers of Ciudad Mobile, a cultural center out of Getsemani, Cartagena, who not only teach us how to do the well-known dance salsa, but they teach us how to do a not so well-known dance called champeta that is rooted in Afro-Colombian culture and is very popular on the Caribbean coast, but not well-known outside of Colombia. And so champeta is super interesting because it is evolving with modern and pop culture, and one champeta song can totally create this whole new dance move. When we were there in January, the big dance move was El Peinado, which was like, again, I apologize for my dance moves, but it was like you were combing your hair in a really cool and slick way. And it's awesome. But they also taught us La Camita, which is the little bed, and I am not going to show you that move, especially by myself up here. But it's a really fun way because that's what's important to us as well, is that our travelers are having fun, they're on vacation. But it's such a great way to learn about the culture and about Afro-Colombian culture that's not really as much recognized outside of Colombia. Or we do studio visits in Mexico City with the design team of Carla Fernandez, their team's working tirelessly to preserve they're working with 24 artisan indigenous communities throughout Mexico to preserve their craftsmanship that is dying out. So they work with them and they take these beautiful skills and fabrics or designs and integrate them into more modern fashion and sell them at a global scale. So the photographer component. Why is it so important for us to have a photographer? Well, if you have a screen between you and that person, you can't make that basic human connection with them. And that person in front of you turns into all about the perfect Instagram post rather than what they're saying and you listening to them. And so having the photographer really allows our travelers to go back to connecting with individuals, but allows someone else to take care of the FOMO duties. I understand that I'm guilty of it too. We want to share on social media. So rather than try to fight against it, it's really how do we just create an alternative and make it easier for our travelers to still experience it, but still get the awesome images that they want and of their travels and not have to worry about it. Something I forgot to mention is that we give our travelers edited images each morning. So they wake up and they check their email and the images are there. They click the link and it makes it like streamlined so they can download it and upload it to any channel. And the reason we did this is because we also get that our travelers want to share in real time. That's just the reality of social media and where we're at today. And so to really get people off the phones, we have to provide that service. So as I look at all of this, I realize that the crazier thing for me and based on my life experiences is if I didn't start something like El Camino, or the more unlikely circumstance is El Camino not existing. And those two aha moments in Guatemala were pivotal and they were critical to sparking this strong intuitive notion in me that at that time I was the right person and now is the right time to start something like El Camino. But again, it's not the only reason El Camino exists. So I want to step back here. El Camino exists. We are a registered LLC. I have been paying taxes for 2 years, and I know I have been, paying and filing taxes, but I know I sounded like I'm a little bit in disbelief. That's because I still can't believe this is my business at many times. But the reason we exist is because what I did after I had those aha moments. And so what I did might be kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I shared the idea with everyone that I met. And so I'm a huge believer that ideas shouldn't live in your head. They should be out in the wild, and you should be able to have others breathe life into them. And so telling everyone this idea for El Camino really helped me to test my assumptions, understand what got people excited. Would people be excited about the concept? What was confusing? What clicked with people? So it wasn't to say, should I do this idea or should I not do this idea? I knew that I should do this idea and run with it, but it was more of like the cheapest way to figure out what works and doesn't work even before launching anything. It was also a huge reality check for me when I told a particular person my idea, and they said, Kata, that is a great idea. And I was like, awesome. Everyone, this is great. He thinks it's good. And then he goes, but don't think someone else hasn't had that idea. It's all about who runs harder and faster and smarter with that idea. And so in that moment, I really realized that ideas are cheap. It's about execution and running with it and actually executing on that idea. So for me, that was absolutely critical. And it's a tactic we still use as we grow as a company because we're always coming up with new ideas. I'm very open about where we're going, what our challenges are, and projects we're working on. It has proven super successful in being able to figure things out. But for us to continue to push the boundaries of travel and stay 3 steps ahead of any other travel company, we absolutely need to be cultivating serendipity and aha moments at all times. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we surround ourselves by individuals and companies that have nothing to do with travel, complete different industries than ourselves. I personally like to surround myself with people with very diverse backgrounds who didn't grow up anything like me. And from that, I can really get inspired by new concepts that are, new concepts to myself, and see how I can integrate them into our travel company in an interesting way. And travel is great for that, right? You're always meeting new people and hearing new things and learning from new cultures, but you can do that here at home in DC as well. I mean, we're so lucky that we live in such a diverse city, and we have so many countries represented here. So I think it's so important to go seek out different perspectives than your own. The other thing is putting yourself in really uncomfortable situations. And that, and this might sound cliche, but that's how we grow, right? And when something kind of scares you, go for it and go for that moment and be open to that moment. But don't have your Fry Festival moment where you set it too high. I don't want to say be a realistic, but just keep making yourself uncomfortable. So what has this resulted for us? Well, some of the things that have come out from being around new ideas and concept is last year we took 10 people from our community to go volunteer 2 weeks in refugee camps in Greece, and that was absolutely life-changing. We are now doing a creative retreat in the middle of the Colombian jungle this summer. We're in the middle of creating an empathy and cultural storytelling workshop with a pretty well-known photographer in Medellin, Colombia. So to wrap this all up, I wanted to talk about one more moment in the El Camino journey that I feel perfectly crystallizes why I so strongly believe a travel company like El Camino needs to exist, and what can happen when you run with that aha moment, you lean into it, you explore it. So Medellin, Colombia. Actually know some people here, their family's from Medellin, which is awesome. How many of you have been there? Yeah? Okay, great. And how many of you are thinking of traveling to Medellin sometime? Okay, great. So this also might be a little bit of a travel tip. Well, it is a travel tip, but I know that Medellin, how most people know it or what they know about it is Narcos, a very popular Netflix series. And unfortunately, the story that is told often about Medellin is that one of violence and the drug lords and Pablo Escobar. But what is not often shared, or what the story that's not often told, is the comeback story, the resiliency story. So Medellin has gone from being one of the most violent cities in the world to one of the most socially progressive. And that's because soon after the narco-terriers, the local government invested billions of dollars into a policy called social urbanism, where they had a majority of their local budget go towards social infrastructure and other social programs geared to the poorest communities in the city. And this is a policy that continues today. So 85% of Medellin's budget goes to social urbanism. And because of that, it has become this urban planning jewel around the world. So government officials and urban planners from Rwanda to Amsterdam come to study the transformation of Medellin. And one neighborhood that really exemplifies the power of social urbanism is Comuna 13. So Comuna 13 was one of the hardest hit neighborhoods during the narco-terror years. The main road that goes through the neighborhood connects to the main drug trafficking road. So for decades, it was caught in the crossfire between the Colombian military and police and the guerrillas and the drug traffickers. And a lot of innocent people lost their lives during that time. So with social urbanism, the local government and the community invested tons of money into cultural programs and the youth. And so now in Comuna 13, there's a famous hip hop center that's using the 5 tenets of hip hop to educate youth about issues, but also give them an outlet that doesn't have to be an illicit activity. There are these famous escalators, so if you see those orange things with the cover, that go into, Comuna 13 is up on the hillside of Medellin, so it goes up into the hillsides to give members of the community better access to their homes and different centers within it. And then they've invested a ton of money in graffiti art. So as you can see, it's a very, very colorful town, and you walk around and there are these amazing murals, and graffiti artists from all around the world come to collaborate with local artists and create these beautiful murals. Comuna 13, like, you can learn about it easily if you were to pick up a Lonely Planet book or even look at guides to Medellin, and it'll tell you a couple sentences about what I said. And when you go there, you'll see tourists there walking around, taking pictures in front of the murals, and going up the escalators, coming down, and then leaving. And so we saw this as an opportunity to really get deeper insight into the history of this resilient community, and as well support a community that has worked tirelessly to forge ahead. So as part of that, we've teamed with a local graffiti artist. Well, that's actually some of the art that you'll see when you walk around. But we teamed with a local graffiti artist, Chota, who's the one in the blue baseball cap. His Instagram is @Chota_13. He told me to tell you guys all of that when I said that I was going to be talking about him and his art in this presentation. He's like, please share my social media channels. So Chota grew up in this community. He witnessed things no kid should ever witness before. But he is part of the comeback story of Medellin and of Comuna 13, and he's critical to the creative and artist community of that of Comuna 13. And so Chota walks us around the neighborhood, telling us the history and the story of Comuna 13 from his perspective and his lived experience. And he shows us his murals, these stunning murals that are all around the neighborhood, and is able to talk to us directly about what they represent for him, what moments in his life they represent, and why it might represent some of the darkest moments in the community, but it also represents some of the proudest moments in their community, and why he is so proud to be from Comuna 13. He'll also talk about other murals that you will see. So this mural here is a very popular mural that is, if you look up Comuna 13, it's often shown. And it looks like a great mural. You'll see a lot of people taking pictures in front of it, a happy mural, it's elephants. But you might wonder, well, why are they holding white handkerchiefs in their nostrils? Or their trunks, sorry. So this mural represents actually one of the darkest days in Comuna 13's history. It's 2 days in October of 2002 when the Colombian government carried out a mission called Operación Orión, which they actually don't publicly recognize to this day. And it was 2 days where they said, we are going to wipe this community of any guerrillas that are in here, any drug lord or drug traffickers, and we don't care who gets in our way, and we are gonna do basically an all-out assault. And so for 2 days, there were helicopters over the community. There was just pure chaos and war, and shooting everywhere. And the members of the community had to stay in their house for 2 days, living in complete fear, having to be under their beds and tables to avoid any stray bullets that might come through their windows. And on that last day, there was an older woman in the community whose grandson was killed innocently. And with that grief and that complete, she was tired and just done of living in such fear. And so she came out waving a white handkerchief saying, I surrender, let us live in peace, let us live in peace. And her neighbors came out in solidarity with her and came out with their white handkerchiefs and started screaming the same thing of like, just let us live in peace. We just want to live in peace. And soon a lot of people from the neighborhood came out with these white handkerchiefs until you saw a sea of white handkerchiefs throughout the whole community. And that moment was really where that community decided we need to do something. We can't live like this anymore. And so the elephants represent the idea that this community will never lose their memory. They won't lose their history and what happened to them, but they knew to really get ahead that they had to act like a pack of elephants. They had to band together. They had to stick together as a family and as a community to forge ahead. And so if going there to Comuna Tres on your own, you would just never really understand this and have this deep insight. But with Chota, he's able to talk about it from such a personal experience. And that whole experience and visiting the community just means so much more for our travelers. And beyond that, at the end, our travelers are often like, well, Chota, I want to buy your art. Like, where can I get your art? And he'll be like, okay, great. Pull out your phones. He'll pull out his phone, look at his Instagram, and he'll ask them, okay, what one do you like? What one can I make for you? And he'll personally create these beautiful pieces of art. So on our last trip in January, 13 travelers bought these large pieces of art for about $100 to $120 each. For someone in his community, the average income is about $8 a day. So through that simple exchange and transaction, Chota was able to make 6.5 months of work through what he is so excited about and what he's so passionate about, his art. So it's moments like this, and it's the story of Comuna Trece that just keeps me excited about what we're doing. It drives me. It makes this crazy entrepreneurial journey completely worth it. And my hope is that when you leave here, you take a more objective approach to your big idea or the business you're thinking about starting. And instead of saying, that idea would be so crazy for me to start, think, based on my life experiences, that idea would be crazy for me not to start. And you really do not need a eureka moment to start thinking about that. Thanks, everyone.